What if the stupidest idea you've ever had is worth millions? You live in a world where a plain rock in a box outsells cutting-edge technology. The ideas investors laughed out of the room are now the companies we can't imagine living without, while brilliant concepts gather dust in rejection piles. A cereal box saved what became a $75 billion company, and a college prank evolved into the world's largest social network. In this video, we'll uncover how seemingly worthless concepts transformed into empire-building juggernauts that made both founders and early investors obscenely wealthy. Sometimes, the dumbest idea in the room is the only one worth betting on. 1. The American economy can be brutal, but the story of Gary Dahl's pet rock might be the most laughably successful business idea in history. In 1975, this advertising executive turned a bar joke about low-maintenance pets into a $15 million empire by selling ordinary rocks for $3.95 each. The rocks cost him a penny, came in a cardboard pet carrier with air holes, and included a 32-page training manual with instructions like how to teach your rock to sit and how to house train your rock. Over 1.5 million Americans bought what was essentially packaging and copywriting wrapped around a worthless stone. The pet rock fad lasted exactly 6 months before collapsing, but not before Dahl could cash out. The law had nothing to say, because selling rocks to willing buyers, however absurd, violates no statute. Sometimes, capitalism's greatest victories are also its most ridiculous jokes. 2. Before Facebook dominated our digital lives, Mark Zuckerberg created something far more controversial. In 2003, he launched FaceMash at Harvard, a hot or not style website where students could compare and rate their classmates' attractiveness. He didn't bother asking for permission to use the photos. Instead, he hacked Harvard's systems and downloaded student ID pictures from various house websites. Within hours, the site crashed Harvard's servers as 450 visitors cast 22,000 votes. Harvard's administrative board promptly shut it down and charged Zuckerberg with breaching security, violating copyrights, and violating individual privacy. Facing expulsion, Zuckerberg apologized profusely and claimed it was completely improvised. The board ultimately let him stay at Harvard, inadvertently allowing him to create the Facebook.com just months later. FaceMash taught Zuckerberg a lesson about user engagement that would make him billions, while Harvard learned that sometimes punishing student hackers just makes them more determined. 3. In 2008, 3 broke entrepreneurs found themselves rejected by 7 investors while pitching their idea for strangers to rent air mattresses in other people's homes. Their concept seemed not just doomed, but actively dangerous. Who would let random people sleep in their home? Who would trust strangers enough to sleep in theirs? 5 investors explicitly declined, with 1 stating the market did not seem large enough. Even Y Combinator's Paul Graham admitted funding them only because we really liked the founders, not the concept. When traditional funding dried up, they got creative, designing, and selling cereal boxes themed around the 2008 election, Obama O's and Captain McCain's, selling them for $40 each and raising $30,000 to keep their ridiculous idea alive. That company? Airbnb, now valued at over $75 billion. Sometimes the dumbest ideas aren't dumb at all. They're just so innovative that investors lack the imagination to see their potential. 4. You know those tweets you're scrolling through between meetings? The entire platform was considered such a trivial concept that it emerged as a desperate pivot from a failing podcast company. In 2006, Odeo was on the brink of irrelevance after Apple launched iTunes Podcasts. During a day-long brainstorming session, Jack Dorsey pitched a simple SMS service limited to 140 characters where users could share status updates. Most colleagues dismissed the idea as worthless. Why would anyone care about strangers' mundane activities? Even its name sounded ridiculous. Tohrt-te-ar, vowels removed to seem edgy like Flickr. The first tweet ever sent, "Just setting up my Twitter," hardly suggested a revolution. Twitter remained an internal project for months before launching publicly in July 2006, becoming a social media giant despite its seemingly pointless premise. The lesson? Sometimes limitations, like 140 characters, aren't flaws but features, creating unexpected value through constraint. 5. In 2007, Twitter was growing but hardly mainstream when Chris Messina proposed using the pound symbol, chayers, to group related tweets. Twitter executives rejected his idea outright, claiming it was too nerdy and would never catch on with ordinary users. Messina, undeterred, implemented the concept anyway through sheer grassroots adoption during the 2007 San Diego wildfires, where Jasher's San Diego fire became crucial for coordinating emergency information. What's remarkable isn't just that Twitter initially dismissed what would become one of its most defining features, it's that they never patented or protected the hashtag at all. Messina deliberately chose not to trademark his invention, allowing it to spread organically across all social platforms. Today, the hashtag organizes billions of posts daily across Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and beyond. Sometimes the most valuable innovations are the ones given freely to the world rather than hoarded for profit. 6. In 2004, fresh-faced Harvard sophomore Mark Zuckerberg launched the Facebook exclusively for Harvard students, requiring a harvard.edu email address to join. Critics called it unnecessary since Friendster and MySpace already dominated social networking. What made it worse? The platform's glacially slow expansion strategy, adding one college at a time rather than opening to everyone immediately. This manufactured scarcity created something unintentional: extreme exclusivity. Students at non-Facebook schools were desperate to join, creating the first ever waitlist for a website. When Facebook finally reached a new campus, 80% of undergraduates typically signed up within 2 weeks. What seemed like an arbitrary limitation became Facebook's greatest strength, generating unprecedented engagement through artificial scarcity. The strategy's genius was accidentally proving what elite universities had known for centuries: people value most what they cannot easily have. 7. When Snapchat launched in 2011 with its disappearing message concept, tech critics were merciless. Why would anyone want their messages to vanish? Every established platform was built on permanent digital archives. Investors laughed at what seemed like a sexting app for teenagers. Snapchat founder Evan Spiegel was even rejected by a Facebook executive who walked out halfway through his presentation. The concept seemed not just strange, but fundamentally opposed to social media's core value proposition of creating a permanent digital record. What critics missed was the growing fatigue with digital permanence, the exhaustion of performing for posterity on platforms where everything you say follows you forever. Snapchat's ephemeral nature didn't just allow risque content, it created space for authentic, unfiltered human interaction in a digital landscape increasingly defined by careful curation. Sometimes removing functionality creates more freedom than adding it. 8. LinkedIn faced immediate criticism upon its 2003 launch for being too narrow, focusing exclusively on professional networking when broader social platforms were gaining traction. Critics questioned whether people would bother maintaining separate personal and professional online identities, predicting users would simply connect with colleagues on mainstream platforms instead. Even more questionable was LinkedIn's business model: premium subscriptions in an era when everything online was expected to be free. The platform grew painfully slowly, taking a full year to reach just 500,000 users, while Facebook and others exploded exponentially. What skeptics missed was the value of context-specific identity, that professionals actually wanted separation between Friday night photos and Monday morning meetings. Today, LinkedIn has over 900 million members and was acquired by Microsoft for $26.2 billion. proving that sometimes narrower focus creates deeper value than broad appeal. 9. When Jeff Bezos pitched Amazon in 1994, he faced brutal rejection from investors who couldn't comprehend selling books online. One potential backer simply walked out during Bezos' presentation. Another famously told him, "Who would ever want to buy books online?" The concept seemed especially absurd because Bezos wasn't even a bookseller. He was a computer science graduate working in finance. His insistence that Amazon would eventually sell everything seemed like dangerous overreach rather than visionary planning. What's more, his business model intentionally delayed profitability in favor of growth, which most investors considered financial suicide. Even his company name choice, Amazon, was criticized as pretentious for a startup. 29 years later, Bezos became the world's richest person by understanding what investors couldn't: that the internet would fundamentally reshape retail commerce by prioritizing selection and convenience over physical storefronts. 10. In 2012, an advertising startup called Color launched with an unprecedented $41 million in funding before they had a single user. Their photo-sharing app allowed people to share pictures with strangers in their vicinity, essentially creating temporary photo albums with people you didn't know but happened to be near. Users hated it immediately. The app was confusing, lacked privacy controls, and solved a problem nobody had. Within a year, the company imploded spectacularly, selling its assets to Apple for a fraction of its funding. Color became Silicon Valley's cautionary tale about valuation divorced from value, proving that even the smartest investors can be blinded by FOMO and founders' previous successes. The legal aftermath included shareholder lawsuits and accusations of mismanagement, but the most lasting impact was on startup culture itself, where "don't be color" became shorthand for prioritizing user needs over investor hype. 11. A middle-aged Nebraska man walked into a Walmart to return his printer. After being denied due to the store's 15-day return policy, he was on day 16, he returned to his car, deliberately got a running start, and rammed his vehicle through the front entrance, demolishing merchandise displays and narrowly missing customers. His rationale? "They wouldn't take my printer back." When arrested, he seemed genuinely bewildered that his reaction was considered disproportionate. The court ordered psychological evaluation, revealing no diagnosable mental illness, just a profound entitlement complex and catastrophic anger management issues. He served 18 months for property damage and reckless endangerment, while being ordered to pay $22,000 in restitution. The case prompted Walmart to create its Calm Customer Crisis training program, teaching employees de-escalation techniques specifically for return policy disputes, which data showed triggered more customer rage than any other interaction. 12. In 2008, Uber founders pitched their black car ride-sharing concept to investors. They faced immediate rejection over seemingly insurmountable obstacles: entrenched taxi monopolies, municipal regulations, insurance liabilities, and the fundamental risk of letting strangers drive each other around. One investor told them bluntly, "Your business model isn't just unlikely, it's illegal in most cities." Rather than avoiding regulatory challenges, Uber embraced a beg forgiveness, don't ask permission approach, launching in cities without approval and weaponizing customer loyalty against regulators. When cities tried shutting them down, Uber mobilized riders to flood officials with complaints. The company's growth at all costs mentality eventually led to legal battles in nearly every jurisdiction they entered. Their strategy fundamentally changed how startups approach regulation. Instead of complying with existing rules, they built services so popular that laws were eventually rewritten to accommodate them, essentially privatizing public transportation policy through sheer market force. 13. In 1976, two childhood friends decided to sell homemade ice cream from a renovated gas station in Vermont. With a $12,000 investment, $4,000 borrowed, they took a $5 correspondence course in ice cream making and started mixing unconventional flavors in a single machine. Financial advisors warned their premium pricing strategy was doomed. Charging more than double what competitors did for ice cream seemed absurd. Even more questionable was their location in a cold weather state with brutal winters. Experts predicted bankruptcy within a year. Their company, Ben & Jerry's, not only survived, but revolutionized the premium dessert category, eventually selling to Unilever for $326 million. What made it work? Their business model transcended product by integrating social advocacy directly into their brand identity, creating what we now call values-based marketing. Sometimes the experts are wrong because they measure only historical patterns while missing cultural shifts that redefine value itself. 14. You drop a hot McDonald's coffee in your lap while driving. Most people would blame themselves, but in 1992, 79-year-old Stella Liebeck sued after suffering third-degree burns requiring skin grafts. The case became the poster child for frivolous lawsuits, with late-night comedians mocking the apparent absurdity of blaming a restaurant because coffee is hot. What they didn't mention? McDonald's policy required coffee be served at 180, 190-degree prefs, hot enough to cause third-degree burns in 2 to 7 seconds. The company had received over 700 previous burn complaints, yet refused to lower the temperature. Liebeck initially asked for just $20,000 to cover medical bills. When McDonald's offered only $800, the case went to trial, where a jury awarded $2.9 million in damages, later reduced to $640,000. The lawsuit forced fast food chains nationwide to adopt safer temperature standards and add explicit warnings, likely preventing thousands of similar injuries. 15. In 1990, McDonald's spent millions launching the McClain Deluxe, a reduced fat burger advertised as 91% fat-free. The marketing campaign heavily emphasized its healthfulness, targeting nutrition-conscious consumers who typically avoided fast food. There was just one problem. To replace the missing fat while maintaining flavor, McDonald's added carrageenan, seaweed extract, and water binding, agents that actually made the burger less healthy in other ways. Consumers noticed the strange taste immediately, and within 3 years, the McClain vanished from menus entirely. The failure prompted a class action lawsuit alleging deceptive marketing, which McDonald's settled by funding nutrition education programs. The case established stronger standards for health-related marketing claims across the fast food industry. More importantly, it demonstrated that consumers won't sacrifice taste for dubious health benefits, a lesson that continues to shape fast food menu development today. 16. A California woman filed a $100 million lawsuit against Nutella's parent company, Ferrero USA, for advertising their chocolate hazelnut spread as part of a nutritious breakfast. The plaintiff claimed she was shocked to discover Nutella contained high amounts of sugar after feeding it to her children for years, despite the product's ingredient list clearly stating sugar as the first item. What seemed like a frivolous complaint gained traction when investigations revealed Ferrero's marketing specifically positioned Nutella alongside whole grain toast and fruit, implying similar nutritional benefits. The 2012 case settled for $3.5 million, forcing Ferrero to modify all advertising and packaging to explicitly acknowledge Nutella's dessert-like nutritional profile. More significantly, the settlement triggered a wave of similar lawsuits against food manufacturers using health halos to mask nutritionally questionable products, fundamentally changing how companies market sweetened spreads, breakfast cereals, and children's food products throughout the industry. 17. In 1995, a man sued Pepsi after watching a commercial showing people redeeming Pepsi points for merchandise, ending with a teenager landing a Harrier jet at his school with the caption, 7,000 Pepsi points. The plaintiff, John Leonard, collected 15 points and sent Pepsi a check for $700,050 at 10 cents per point to cover the remaining points needed for the jet. When Pepsi refused, arguing the commercial was obviously a joke, Leonard sued for breach of contract, fraud, and deceptive advertising. The court ruled for Pepsi, stating, "No reasonable person could have believed that the commercial actually offered consumers a Harrier jet, establishing the legal precedent of puffery. The understanding that obvious hyperbole in advertising doesn't constitute a binding offer." The case transformed advertising law, creating clear guidelines distinguishing between legitimate offers and humorous exaggeration in promotional materials. 18. In 2003, a man wearing a gorilla suit broke into a Banana Republic store in Los Angeles. Security footage showed him methodically folding clothes, organizing displays, and even helping several confused customers before police arrived. His defense? He genuinely believed the store should be staffed by people in gorilla costumes based on the name Banana Republic. The judge, while struggling to maintain composure, ruled that trademark confusion was not a valid defense for breaking and entering. However, the case gained national attention, with late-night shows and marketing textbooks citing it as the ultimate example of brand name misconception. The man received community service rather than jail time, while Gap Inc., Banana Republic's parent company, clarified in employee training materials that despite the name, the brand references a stylized tropical aesthetic, not actual bananas or primates, a clarification they never imagined would be necessary. 19. In 2012, 2 Australian men sued Subway after measuring their foot-long sandwiches and discovering they were only 11 inches. Their class action lawsuit quickly went viral, with hundreds joining to claim Subway had engaged in deceptive advertising for decades. Subway's defense? Footlong was a trademark, not a measurement promise. The case revealed that Subway's bread baking protocols allowed for variation in loaf sizes, with no quality control ensuring 12-inch precision. After 3 years of litigation, Subway settled, agreeing to implement new measuring protocols and quality controls in all 44,000 global locations to ensure sandwiches met the advertised length. The company also paid $525,000 in legal fees, but provided no monetary compensation to customers. The case fundamentally changed how restaurants advertise size-specific food items, creating a legal standard that descriptive measurements in food advertising must be accurate or clearly marked as approximate. 20. The sound you hear when turning on your computer might seem trivial, but in 1995, it triggered one of tech's strangest lawsuits. Microsoft's Windows 95 startup sound was created by legendary musician Brian Eno, who charged $35,000 for the 6-second audio clip. The problem? Another composer claimed he had previously created an eerily similar melody. When Microsoft refused to acknowledge the similarity, he sued for copyright infringement. In court, musicologists demonstrated that both melodies used the same rare chord progression. Microsoft settled for an undisclosed amount, but the case established important precedent about sonic branding and the copyrightability of micro-compositions. The dispute also created the first legal framework for evaluating sound logos, brief audio signatures that identify brands. Today's streaming services pay millions in royalties for even the shortest compositions, largely because this case established that even seconds-long musical creations deserve copyright protection. 21. A California surfer sued another surfer for stealing his wave in what became known as the Mavericks incident. The plaintiff argued that by dropping in on a wave he had already claimed according to surfer's code, the defendant had committed both negligence and theft of personal property. His novel legal theory? That once he had established position on the wave, it temporarily became his property. The judge, an avid surfer himself, refused to dismiss the case outright, despite legal scholars expecting immediate dismissal. Instead, he held 3 days of hearings, featuring testimony from surfing legends about unwritten rules of wave priority. Ultimately, the case was dismissed, with the judge ruling that natural phenomena cannot be claimed as property, no matter how established subcultural rules might be. The case became required reading in sports law classes nationwide, establishing clear limitations on courts enforcing uncodified rules of recreational activities. 22. In 1991, Gerald Mayo filed a lawsuit against Satan and his staff, accusing them of placing deliberate obstacles in his path and violating his constitutional rights. Mayo, representing himself, requested the court grant him informa pauperis status, waiving filing fees due to inability to pay, while he sued the Prince of Darkness. The U.S. District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania actually issued a formal opinion, rather than simply dismissing the case. Judge Gerald Weber noted 3 problems. First, the plaintiff had failed to include Satan's address for proper service of process. Second, personal jurisdiction was questionable, since no evidence established Satan did business in Pennsylvania. And finally, the case presented a class action where the class of plaintiffs is too numerous to bring before the court. The case appears in first-year law textbooks worldwide as a classic example of sovereign immunity limits and proper defendant identification requirements. 23. When an Oregon man found a mouse in his Mountain Dew, he naturally sued PepsiCo. The company's legal defense created an unexpected PR nightmare. Their lawyers argued that Mountain Dew's high acid content would have dissolved the mouse into a jelly-like substance if it had truly been in the can during production, essentially claiming their product was so corrosive it could disintegrate mammalian tissue. While this argument convinced the judge to dismiss the case, the mouse was intact, thus must have been added after opening. The public reacted with horror at what PepsiCo had inadvertently admitted about their beverage's chemical composition. Sales temporarily dropped 8% after the Mountain Dew dissolves mice, headlines spread. The case became a textbook example of when winning a legal battle means losing the public relations war, forcing companies to consider how defensive arguments might be perceived beyond the courtroom. 24. A New Jersey man sued his former employer in 2010 for wrongful termination after being fired for refusing to remove a bumper sticker supporting his favorite football team, the New York Giants. The twist? His employer was the Philadelphia Eagles stadium operations contractor, and the man worked at Lincoln Financial Field during home games. His legal argument centered on First Amendment protections, claiming even private employers couldn't restrict political speech. The judge disagreed, ruling that sports team affiliations don't qualify as protected political expression, and employers can reasonably restrict speech that fundamentally conflicts with business interests. The case established an important employment law distinction between genuine political expression, protected, and sports fandom, not protected, while becoming required reading in sports management programs nationwide. Sometimes your constitutional rights end where your rival team's stadium begins. 25. In 1999, a Utah woman sued her neighbor because the neighbor's cats were allegedly giving her meaningful looks and telepathically threatening her. She demanded $100,000 in damages, plus a restraining order requiring the cats remain at least 50 feet from her property and wear little tinfoil hats to block their telepathic powers. The judge dismissed the case, but not before the woman submitted a 20-page handwritten brief detailing the cat's supposed threats, including their plans to steal her soul and report her activities to alien overlords. While clearly the product of mental illness rather than legal grievance, the case established precedent for early dismissal of suits based on physically impossible claims. It's now cited in legal textbooks as the benchmark for what constitutes frivolous litigation, and led to court reforms allowing judges to order psychological evaluations before proceeding with cases alleging supernatural harm. 26. In 2002, a man sued NBC after fear-induced injuries sustained while watching Fear Factor. During an episode where contestants consumed pureed rats, he vomited so violently that he ran into a doorway, knocking himself unconscious and causing neck injuries. His lawsuit claimed NBC failed to adequately warn viewers about potentially vomit-inducing content that could lead to physical injury. NBC's defense centered on assumption of risk. The show was literally called Fear Factor and advertised disgusting stunts. The judge dismissed the case, ruling that television viewers have a responsibility to change the channel or look away from content they find disturbing. The case established important precedent limiting broadcaster liability for viewer reactions to programming, while NBC quietly added stronger content warnings before particularly graphic segments. Sometimes the law has to remind us that the off button exists for a reason. 27. Before the Winklevoss twins became Bitcoin billionaires, they sued Mark Zuckerberg for allegedly stealing their social network idea, Harvard Connection. Their 2004 lawsuit claimed Zuckerberg, hired to code their site, deliberately stalled while building Facebook using their concepts. What made the case extraordinary wasn't just the eventual $65 million settlement, but how it reshaped intellectual property law for digital platforms. The court established that general concepts, like college social network, can't be owned, but implementation specifics can be protected. Most crucially, the case revealed the legal gray area when developers work on similar projects simultaneously. How much code or functionality can overlap before constituting theft? The litigation, immortalized in The Social Network, established precedent for distinguishing between abstract ideas and actionable intellectual property theft in software development, fundamentally changing how founders protect early-stage concepts while working with outside developers. 28. In 2013, a New York man sued his date for texting during a movie. Brandon Vesmar filed a small claims lawsuit seeking $17.31, the exact cost of the movie ticket, after his companion used her phone 20 times during a screening of Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2. His legal theory? That texting constituted breach of implied contract, as movie attendance carries an implicit agreement to observe proper theater etiquette. The woman, bewildered at being sued over $17, initially refused to pay, but eventually handed Vesmar the money outside a court appearance just to end the matter. While legally insignificant, the case generated international media attention, prompting theaters nationwide to strengthen anti-texting policies and enforcement. AMC theaters even referenced the lawsuit in their pre-movie etiquette messages, proving sometimes the smallest lawsuits create the largest cultural impact. 29. In 1993, a woman sued a nursing home for allowing her elderly mother to have a sexual relationship with another resident. Both seniors had been deemed mentally competent, and both confirmed the relationship was consensual, but the daughter argued the facility had a duty to prevent such behavior due to her mother's age, 83. The groundbreaking case forced courts to address elderly sexuality rights for the first time, ultimately ruling that nursing homes cannot restrict consensual adult relationships regardless of family objections. The judge's opinion explicitly stated, advanced age does not diminish the desire for or right to human intimacy, establishing constitutional privacy protections for seniors in care facilities. The case transformed eldercare policies nationwide, requiring facilities to develop official protocols balancing resident autonomy with safety concerns. Today, senior living communities routinely address intimate relationships in their intake procedures directly because of this landmark ruling. 30. A Florida man sued a local psychic for fraud after she failed to remove a curse she claimed had been placed on him by a witch. He had paid the fortune teller $25,000 for specialized rituals, including sacrificing 5 roosters and a goat, but his bad luck persisted. His lawsuit sought treble damages under consumer protection statutes, arguing psychic services should be held to the same standards as other businesses. The psychic's defense? That removing curses comes with no guarantees, and religious services are constitutionally protected. The judge split the difference in his ruling. While fortune-telling itself is protected speech, specific promises of results in exchange for money constitute enforceable contracts. The defendant was ordered to refund the man's money plus interest. The case established a legal distinction between spiritual advice, protected, and guaranteed supernatural outcomes, potentially fraudulent, fundamentally changing how psychic services advertise throughout Florida. 31. In 2012, an Arizona woman sued a drive-through safari park after a camel bit off a portion of her finger when she ran out of the provided food pellets. Her lawsuit claimed the park failed to warn visitors about aggressive feeding behaviors from hungry animals. The park's defense centered on the 12 warning signs throughout the facility and the explicit waiver she had signed before entering, which specifically mentioned potential injury from animal encounters. What complicated matters? Security footage showed the woman holding her empty palm directly against the camel's mouth while taking selfies with her other hand. The judge ruled for the safari park, establishing the important precedent that wildlife attractions can't be held liable when guests ignore explicit safety instructions. The case became required reading in tourism liability law, defining the limits of attraction operators' responsibility when visitors deliberately place themselves in documented danger. 32. In 1970, a woman sued Campbell's Soup after finding a dead chicken neck in her chicken noodle soup. While product contamination lawsuits are common, this case took an unusual turn when Campbell's legal team argued that a chicken neck is technically an expected ingredient in chicken soup, just not usually in recognizable form. Their defense: the presence of chicken anatomy in chicken soup cannot constitute contamination. The jury disagreed, awarding the woman $15,000 for emotional distress. The ruling established the important consumer expectation doctrine in food safety law. Even if an ingredient is technically appropriate for the product, its presentation must align with reasonable consumer expectations. This standard fundamentally transformed food processing and quality control throughout the industry, requiring manufacturers to ensure that technically correct ingredients appear in forms consumers expect to encounter them. 33. In 1991, Richard Overton sued Anheuser-Busch for $10,000, claiming their Bud Light commercials constituted false advertising. His complaint? The ads showing beautiful people having adventures on beaches didn't accurately represent his experience drinking beer. Despite consuming large quantities of Bud Light, he reported no increase in success with women, improved athletic ability, or magical beach scenarios materializing in his life. The Michigan Court of Appeals dismissed the case, ruling that no reasonable consumer would believe beer consumption alone would transform their social circumstances. The ruling created the legal standard of advertising puffery, the understanding that obvious exaggeration or fantasy scenarios in advertising don't constitute legally binding promises. This precedent protects companies from litigation when their products fail to deliver life-changing experiences while requiring truth in factual claims about product characteristics. 34. In 2005, a Nebraska man sued God for causing widespread death, destruction, and terrorization, including natural disasters that caused him fear, terror, and grave physical, emotional, and mental suffering. The plaintiff, a state senator named Ernie Chambers, filing to protest frivolous lawsuits, requested a permanent injunction ordering God to cease destructive activities. The case created a genuine legal conundrum. How does a court dismiss a case against a defendant who, according to religious texts, is omniscient and thus technically already aware of the lawsuit without being served papers? The judge eventually dismissed the case, ruling that without a physical address, the defendant couldn't be properly served. Chambers appealed, arguing that, as an omnipresent being, God was already in the courtroom and aware of proceedings. While ultimately unsuccessful, the satirical case highlighted procedural requirements for lawsuits and demonstrated how court resources can be consumed by creative legal stunts. 35. You walk into a bookstore to browse, feel the pages, smell that new book scent. In 1994, Jeff Bezos decided people would skip all that and buy books through their computers, a notion that struck industry experts as absurd. When pitching Amazon, one investor walked out mid-presentation, scoffing, "Who would ever want to buy books online?" Bezos wasn't even a bookseller, but a computer science graduate working in finance. His claim that Amazon would eventually sell everything seemed like dangerous overreach, not visionary planning. Even the name Amazon was mocked as pretentious for a bookstore that didn't exist. 29 years later, Bezos became the world's richest person by understanding what others couldn't, that convenience and selection would trump the sensory pleasures of retail. The comedy and tragedy of Amazon's success is that those doubting investors were right about one thing: bookstores would indeed suffer. They just didn't realize they were meeting their replacement. 36. Ever wonder why eBay didn't just sell things at fixed prices like normal stores? Founder Pierre Omidyar believed ordinary people would spend hours bidding on used goods from complete strangers, a concept that seemed ludicrous in 1995 when retail meant predictable pricing and professional sellers. Critics thought auctions were too complex and time-consuming for everyday commerce. The psychological insight that made eBay work. Turning shopping into a competitive sport, the platform transformed the dopamine hit of finding a bargain into an addictive game, where winning an auction felt more satisfying than simply purchasing an item. eBay's model seemed destined to remain a niche hobby for collectors, yet it revolutionized peer-to-peer commerce and normalized buying used goods online. The legal precedents established by eBay's early cases created the foundation for marketplace liability rules, determining that platforms aren't responsible for seller misrepresentations, a principle that would later shield tech giants from countless lawsuits. 37. Remember when PayPal suggested we send money through email? Banks literally laughed them out of meetings. In 1999, financial institutions dismissed digital payments as a security nightmare, insisting customers would never trust internet transfers over established methods like checks and credit cards. PayPal's early challenges weren't just technological, but existential. They were labeled as potential money launderers, quasi-banks operating without proper licenses, and facilitators of fraud. The company faced legal challenges in 50 states simultaneously, with each banking authority claiming jurisdiction. What saved them? Regulatory arbitrage. PayPal structured itself not as a bank, but as a money transmitter, exploiting a legal gray area that banking giants had ignored. The resulting legal battles established the regulatory framework that all fintech companies operate under today. Their early fights with regulators created the compliance blueprints that make modern digital payments possible, proving sometimes the most valuable innovation isn't technology, but legal creativity. 38. In 1997, Reed Hastings asked Americans to wait days for DVD deliveries instead of driving 5 minutes to Blockbuster. Industry analysts called his Netflix concept inconvenient, niche, and a solution without a problem. Blockbuster's CEO famously laughed Netflix's founders out of his office when they proposed a partnership. The business model seemed obviously flawed, mailing delicate discs both ways without damage, maintaining inventory across thousands of titles, and somehow turning a profit despite shipping costs. What nobody anticipated was how fundamentally Netflix would leverage a psychological insight. People hate late fees more than they hate waiting. By eliminating the punitive aspect of rentals, Netflix created unprecedented customer loyalty. The real genius came later when they pivoted to streaming before DVD revenue peaked. The company that seemed destined to remain a quirky alternative to real video stores ended up destroying Blockbuster entirely, proving that in business, the tortoise sometimes annihilates the hare. 39. When Google entered the search market in 1998, critics asked a reasonable question. Why would anyone need another search engine when Yahoo, AltaVista, and Excite already existed? The founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, faced consistent rejection, with one potential investor telling them, "People are already satisfied with search." Even more baffling was their business model, or lack thereof. Google launched without any clear way to make money, focusing instead on search quality when competitors were already profitable. Their PageRank algorithm seemed like an academic curiosity rather than a business revolution. What skeptics missed was how profoundly broken existing search engines were, stuffed with ads, delivering irrelevant results, and becoming increasingly unusable. Google's less is more approach wasn't just aesthetic. It reflected a fundamentally different philosophy about information access that would eventually make them one of the most valuable companies in history, transforming Google from a mathematical term into a verb we use daily. 40. In 1995, when newspaper classified ad departments were cash cows generating billions in revenue, Craig Newmark decided to offer classified ads for free. Industry experts declared the model fundamentally unsustainable. How could you possibly build a business without charging for your core service? Newspaper executives dismissed Craigslist as a hobby project that would either fail or be forced to implement fees. The site's intentionally plain design, lack of advertising, and minimal staff seemed like business school anti-patterns. Yet Craigslist's disruptive power came precisely from what it didn't do. It didn't maximize profit, didn't prioritize growth, and didn't try to extract every possible dollar from users. The legal implications were profound, as Craigslist faced, and mostly won, dozens of lawsuits from newspaper companies claiming unfair competition. These cases established important precedent that simply being more efficient isn't legally actionable, even if that efficiency destroys an entire industry's revenue model. Sometimes, the most revolutionary business strategy is choosing not to behave like a traditional business at all. 41. The idea seemed absurd. Let random internet users write an encyclopedia anyone can edit, with no credentials required. When Wikipedia launched in 2001, academic institutions dismissed it as dangerous misinformation that would never match established references like Encyclopedia Britannica. The open editing model appeared fundamentally flawed. How could uncredentialed amateurs possibly create reliable content? Traditional encyclopedia publishers predicted Wikipedia would either collapse from vandalism or remain a niche curiosity with questionable accuracy. What they failed to grasp was the power of collective intelligence and iterative improvement. The site's success challenged fundamental assumptions about expertise, information authority, and knowledge creation. Legal scholars initially worried Wikipedia would become a liability nightmare, yet its governance system, combining open editing with community oversight, created an entirely new model for collaborative content moderation. The project that seemed destined to fail instead became one of humanity's most ambitious knowledge-sharing experiments, forcing us to reconsider who owns information and who has the right to shape our collective understanding. 42. Imagine someone in 2008 asking you to upload all your important files to the cloud instead of keeping them on your own computer. That's exactly what Dropbox proposed, facing immediate skepticism from IT professionals who considered storing sensitive data on remote servers fundamentally irresponsible. Early investors questioned whether people would trust third parties with their documents when local storage was reliable, secure, and already working fine. Even tech-savvy users worried about privacy, security, and accessibility without internet connections. Dropbox's challenge wasn't just technological, but psychological, convincing users to surrender physical control of their digital possessions. What critics missed was the growing fragmentation of our digital lives across multiple devices and the increasing burden of manual file synchronization. The company's regulatory journey established critical legal precedents about data sovereignty, privacy responsibilities, and third-party access limitations that now form the foundation of cloud computing law. A service initially dismissed as risky became so essential that the cloud is now where most of our digital lives reside. 43. When Slack emerged from the ashes of a failed gaming company in 2013, critics called it a solution in search of a problem. Businesses already had email, instant messaging, and numerous communication tools. Why would they need another platform specifically for workplace chat? Early skeptics pointed to the paradox of introducing yet another communication channel to solve communication overload. Even more questionable was Slack's freemium business model, offering core functionality without charge and betting that users would eventually convince their employers to pay. What nobody anticipated was how thoroughly Slack would exploit email's fundamental flaws: the lack of organized threading, the burden of formality, and the isolation of knowledge in individual inboxes. By creating persistent, searchable, and group-focused communication, Slack didn't just replace email, it transformed workplace culture. The legal precedents established in early Slack data retention cases now define how companies must preserve and produce chat records during litigation, creating entirely new categories of discoverable business communication that didn't exist before. 44. In 1999, Mark Benioff declared that software was dead. His company, Salesforce, proposed something that sounded like business suicide: selling software without actually giving customers the software. Instead, they'd access it through the internet and pay monthly. Enterprise IT departments were horrified. Outsourcing critical business functions to external servers seemed recklessly irresponsible. No company will store sensitive customer data on someone else's computers, critics declared. Established software giants dismissed the software-as-a-service model, believing businesses would always prefer owning and controlling their software rather than renting it. The legal battles Salesforce fought with traditional software companies established crucial precedents about service-level agreements, data ownership, and liability limits that now govern the entire SaaS industry. By challenging the fundamental ownership model of software, Salesforce didn't just create a new business model. They initiated a philosophical shift in how we think about digital products, transforming software from a thing you own to a service you access. 45. When Eric Yuan left Cisco to create yet another video conferencing platform in 2011, investors thought he'd lost his mind. The market was already saturated with established solutions like Skype, WebEx, and GoToMeeting. The world doesn't need another video chat app, he was repeatedly told. Even more puzzling was Zoom's focus on technical quality rather than additional features, when competitors were racing to add more capabilities. The company seemed destined to remain a niche alternative until the pandemic forced remote work globally. Yuan's obsession with simplicity and reliability, qualities competitors considered boring, suddenly became Zoom's greatest strength. The service that everyone thought would fail instead became so ubiquitous that Zoom transformed into a verb. The privacy and security challenges that emerged during Zoom's explosive growth created a cascade of regulatory responses, establishing new standards for video communication security that now govern the entire industry. Sometimes the most important innovation isn't adding capabilities, but removing obstacles, creating value through simplicity rather than complexity. 46. When MailChimp launched in 2001, focusing exclusively on email marketing, industry experts thought they'd picked the wrong horse. Social media was clearly the future, and email was supposedly dying. The company's decision to target small businesses rather than enterprise clients seemed equally misguided. Why focus on the market segment with the least money to spend? MailChimp's freemium model appeared particularly puzzling. How could giving away your core product to 95% of users possibly be sustainable? What critics missed was email's remarkable resilience and unique advantages. It's universal, personal, and measurable in ways social media can't match. By focusing exclusively on one communication channel and mastering it completely, MailChimp created depth where competitors chased breadth. The legal battles they fought over spam regulations, data privacy, and consent requirements established critical precedents that shaped digital marketing law. Their early privacy cases created industry standards for opt-out mechanisms and data handling that would later be codified in regulations worldwide, proving that sometimes the most valuable legal contributions come from companies focused on doing one thing exceptionally well. 47. A credit card reader that plugs into a smartphone's headphone jack? In 2009, this idea seemed not just unnecessary, but actively dangerous to financial experts. When Jack Dorsey launched Square, now Block, banks dismissed mobile payment processing as inherently insecure and destined to remain niche. The concept of turning any smartphone into a payment terminal without merchant accounts, credit checks, or complex fee structures violated every established principle of payment processing. Traditional processors predicted massive fraud would quickly bankrupt the company. What they missed was how profoundly broken the existing system was for small merchants, expensive, complex, and inaccessible to millions of businesses operating in cash economies. The legal battles Square fought against financial institutions created new regulatory frameworks for mobile payments that now enable everything from food truck transactions to charity fundraisers. By challenging fundamental assumptions about who deserves access to financial infrastructure, Square didn't just create a company. They democratized electronic payment processing, bringing millions of small businesses into the formal economy. 48. Most payment startups at least try to hide their complexity. But in 2010, Stripe took the opposite approach, explicitly targeting software developers rather than business owners. Their focus seemed bizarrely narrow, providing payment processing that was easy to implement in code rather than easy to use as a business. Established players like PayPal dismissed Stripe's developer-centric model, questioning whether programmers even influenced payment processing decisions. Even more unusual was Stripe's early focus on technical documentation rather than marketing, investing heavily in API design when competitors were building sales teams. This seemingly backward approach revealed a profound insight. In modern companies, developers increasingly drive technology adoption from the bottom up. The regulatory framework Stripe established through its global expansion created new legal standards for cross-border payments and developer-oriented financial services. By approaching payments as fundamentally a software problem rather than a financial one, Stripe redefined an entire industry, proving that sometimes the most valuable perspective is the one everyone else ignores. 49. In 2006, Tobias Lütke couldn't find good software to sell snowboarding equipment online, so he built his own. When Shopify launched, e-commerce experts questioned whether small merchants needed specialized platforms when giants like eBay and Amazon already offered third-party selling. The business model seemed particularly questionable, charging monthly fees to small businesses with minimal sales volume, many of whom would inevitably fail. Traditional retail consultants believed independent online stores couldn't compete with established marketplaces, predicting Shopify would remain a niche service for digital hobbyists. What they missed was the fundamental human desire for ownership and identity in commerce. Merchants wanted their own branded spaces, not just listings on someone else's platform. The legal precedents established through Shopify's evolution created new standards for platform liability, defining the boundaries between facilitating commerce and being responsible for merchant behavior. By empowering small businesses with enterprise-level tools, Shopify didn't just build software. They created an entrepreneurial ecosystem that now powers over 1.7 million businesses worldwide. 50. When Etsy launched in 2005, focusing exclusively on handmade and vintage items, retail experts were bewildered. The platform deliberately excluded mass-manufactured goods at a time when scale and efficiency dominated e-commerce. Critics questioned whether enough consumers would pay premium prices for handcrafted items to support an entire marketplace, especially with the added complexity of unique inventory and inconsistent seller quality. The business seemed fundamentally limited by the production capacity of individual artisans. How could you scale a platform when the sellers themselves couldn't scale? What skeptics missed was the growing consumer fatigue with mass production and the increasing value placed on authenticity and uniqueness. The legal frameworks Etsy developed to verify handmade status and manage the complex boundary between hobby and business created new standards for artisanal commerce regulation. Their policies on intellectual property for crafters established important precedents about the application of copyright and trademark law to handmade goods. By embracing constraints that others avoided, Etsy created a marketplace that derives value precisely from what it excludes. 51. In 2009, Kickstarter proposed something that sounded like a parody of responsible investing, giving money to strangers on the internet for products that don't exist yet, with no equity, legal recourse, or guarantee of delivery. Financial experts were horrified, predicting the platform would quickly become a haven for scammers and failed promises. Traditional investors questioned whether amateur backers could effectively evaluate project viability, while regulatory experts worried about securities law violations. The model seemed fundamentally flawed, encouraging emotional rather than rational investment decisions while removing traditional investor protections. What critics missed was how profoundly crowdfunding would reshape the relationship between creators and audiences, allowing projects to prove market demand before production rather than after. The legal battles Kickstarter fought established the regulatory framework that now governs reward-based crowdfunding, carefully distinguishing it from investment to avoid securities regulations. By creating a funding mechanism for projects too risky, weird, or niche for traditional investment, Kickstarter didn't just build a platform. They expanded the possibility space for creative and entrepreneurial endeavors. 52. Imagine walking into a restaurant and asking them to sell their most popular dishes at 50% off, provided 200 other people agree to the same deal. That's essentially what Groupon proposed in 2008, facing immediate skepticism from retail experts who questioned why any business would cannibalize their revenue through massive discounts. The model seemed obviously unsustainable, merchants losing money on each transaction, while Groupon took a substantial cut of already discounted sales. Traditional marketing consultants predicted businesses would quickly recognize the false economy of acquiring customers who only purchased at steep discounts. What they missed was the psychological power of perceived scarcity and time pressure combined with genuine savings. The regulatory challenges Groupon faced regarding expiration dates, refund policies, and discount advertising established important consumer protection precedents that now govern daily deal platforms worldwide. Their early legal battles with state attorneys general created standardized disclosure requirements for promotional offers that benefit consumers across all discount platforms. The company that was dismissed as mathematically unsound transformed local advertising and normalized the concept of collective buying power. 53. When Foursquare launched in 2009, asking people to broadcast their physical location to friends and strangers, privacy advocates were aghast. The concept of checking in to restaurants, bars, and stores seemed not just pointless, but actively dangerous in an era of growing digital privacy concerns. Critics questioned who would voluntarily share their movements throughout the day, creating potential security risks for what appeared to be minimal benefit. Even tech enthusiasts wondered whether location-based social networking was solving a real problem or creating one. What skeptics missed was how gamification could transform mundane activities into competitive social experiences. Becoming the mayor of your local coffee shop provided a psychological reward that transcended rational utility calculations. The location data practices Foursquare pioneered established important legal precedents about geospatial information collection, storage, and sharing that now govern much of the location-based services industry. By navigating the complex regulatory landscape of personal location data, Foursquare created privacy frameworks that would later influence legislation like GDPR and CCPA, proving that sometimes the most important innovations are in how we govern data rather than how we collect it. 54. In 2004, when restaurant recommendations came from professional critics and trusted friends, Yelp proposed something radical: letting random people with no culinary expertise review businesses anonymously. Restaurant owners were horrified, predicting the platform would empower vindictive customers and unqualified opinions over professional expertise. Traditional review publications dismissed crowdsourced ratings as inherently unreliable, pointing to the self-selection bias of reviewers who had particularly good or bad experiences. The model seemed fundamentally flawed. What would prevent business owners from writing fake positive reviews, or competitors from posting malicious negative ones? What critics missed was the power of aggregation at scale, where enough reviews can create surprisingly reliable signals despite individual biases. The defamation and disclosure cases that emerged from Yelp's growth established critical legal precedents about platform liability, review authenticity, and the boundary between opinion and potentially actionable claims. By democratizing criticism, Yelp didn't just create a review site. They fundamentally altered the power dynamic between businesses and consumers, creating accountability mechanisms that exist entirely outside traditional quality assurance channels. 55. Creating a taxonomy for every song in existence based on 450 distinct musical attributes. When Pandora launched in 2005, music industry experts called founder Tim Westergren's Music Genome Project ludicrously overcomplicated compared to simple playlist sharing. The concept of algorithmic music recommendation seemed unnecessarily technical in an industry dominated by human curation and mainstream radio. Even more questionable was Pandora's early focus on obscure independent artists rather than popular hits. The service that classified songs by their sonic qualities rather than genre labels or popularity metrics appeared destined to remain a niche curiosity for music theorists rather than a viable consumer product. What critics missed was the profound limitation of traditional music discovery, how genre labels and radio formats restricted listeners to familiar territories rather than expanding their horizons. The copyright battles Pandora fought with music publishers established crucial precedents about digital performance royalties that now govern the entire streaming industry. By approaching music recommendation as a data problem rather than a marketing one, Pandora transformed how we discover new music, proving that algorithms can sometimes understand our tastes better than we understand them ourselves. 56. When TripAdvisor launched in 2000 aggregating traveler reviews, the travel industry reacted with dismissive skepticism. Professional travel guides, hotel inspectors, and traditional rating systems had controlled tourism information for decades. The idea that amateur opinions could replace professional assessments seemed absurd. What qualifications did random travelers have to evaluate hospitality standards? Hotel associations predicted the platform would empower unreasonable complaints, while traditional travel publishers questioned the reliability of anonymous reviews. The model appeared fundamentally vulnerable to manipulation through fake reviews from businesses or their competitors. What critics missed was how dramatically the internet would democratize information authority across all domains, including travel. The legal challenges TripAdvisor faced regarding review verification, defamation claims, and disclosure requirements established important precedents about user-generated content liability that now protect review platforms worldwide. By creating a global feedback mechanism for the tourism industry, TripAdvisor didn't just build a review site. They fundamentally transformed service quality incentives across hospitality, making travelers' collective experiences more influential than any professional rating system. 57. When Mint launched in 2006 offering free personal finance tools, Intuit, maker of Quicken, dismissed it as unsustainable. Good financial software simply couldn't be free. The concept seemed not just economically questionable, but actively dangerous. Users providing bank login credentials to a startup rather than established financial institutions. Security experts predicted disaster, while financial advisors questioned whether automated tools could provide meaningful insights compared to professional guidance. Even tech reviewers wondered about the business model. If users weren't paying, how would Mint make money without compromising financial data? What critics missed was how dramatically Mint would improve on existing tools' user experience, replacing complex manual entry with automated synchronization and tedious categorization with intelligent pattern recognition. The regulatory frameworks Mint established for accessing financial data through APIs created the foundation for modern open banking policies. Their approach to screen scraping financial institutions established important legal precedents about data access and ownership that continue to shape fintech regulation today. By making personal finance management accessible and intuitive, Mint didn't just create a product, they democratized financial literacy. 58. In 2008, Evernote proposed a solution to a problem many people didn't realize they had: disorganized digital notes scattered across devices and applications. The concept of a dedicated note-taking platform seemed unnecessarily complex when simple text files, word processors, and physical notebooks already existed. Critics questioned whether users would adopt yet another application for something as basic as note-taking, especially with increasing competition for digital attention. Even tech enthusiasts wondered whether complex note organization was overkill for most users' simple needs. What skeptics missed was the growing fragmentation of digital information and the cognitive burden of managing knowledge across multiple systems. The legal frameworks Evernote established for user data portability, encryption, and cross-border information storage created important precedents for personal information management applications. Their early privacy policies and terms of service became models for the industry, balancing corporate access needs with user ownership rights. By treating notes as a fundamental knowledge management challenge rather than simple text storage, Evernote transformed how we externalize memory, proving sometimes the most valuable innovations address problems we didn't know we had. 59. In 2010, Buffer launched a product that did just one thing: schedule social media posts for later publication. Marketing experts dismissed the concept as trivially narrow compared to comprehensive social media management platforms. The idea seemed far too limited to support a standalone business. Surely, scheduling would simply become a feature within larger marketing suites rather than its own product category. Even tech reviewers questioned whether such a simple utility justified a monthly subscription rather than a one-time purchase. What critics missed was how dramatically focused tools could outperform bundled solutions at specific high-value tasks. The regulatory frameworks Buffer established for accessing social platform APIs created important precedents for third-party tools in an increasingly closed ecosystem. Their approach to social media scheduling established legal standards for platform intermediaries that continue to govern how third-party tools can interact with major social networks. By embracing constraint and mastering a single function, Buffer didn't just build a scheduling tool. They created an entirely new category of productivity software focused on solving specific problems exceptionally well, rather than many problems adequately. 60. In 2013, Melanie Perkins looked at professional design software and saw a problem. Tools like Photoshop required extensive training and powerful computers. Her solution, Canva, made design accessible to non-professionals through templates and drag-and-drop interfaces. Design professionals were dismissive, arguing that simplified tools would produce amateur-looking results and devalue their expertise. Traditional design software companies questioned whether non-designers actually wanted to create visual content at all, predicting the platform would appeal only to a small hobbyist market. Even business analysts wondered whether freemium design tools could generate sufficient revenue when professional software commanded premium prices. What critics missed was the growing democratization of content creation and the increasing need for visual communication across all professional domains. The copyright frameworks Canva established for template licensing and stock asset usage created important precedents for creative marketplaces. Their approach to design democratization established new legal standards for creative tools that balance accessibility with intellectual property protection. By reimagining design software for non-designers, Canva didn't just create a product, they expanded the definition of who gets to be a creator. 61. When GitHub launched in 2008, enterprise IT departments were skeptical about hosting precious source code on someone else's servers. Version control was traditionally handled internally through systems like SVN or CVS, with strict access controls and security protocols. The concept of a social network for code seemed unnecessarily risky. Why would companies expose their intellectual property to a third-party platform? Open source advocates questioned whether centralization aligned with distributed development philosophies, while security experts worried about potential vulnerabilities in a shared infrastructure. What skeptics missed was how dramatically GitHub would transform collaboration through social features like pull requests, issues, and contribution graphs. The legal frameworks GitHub established for code licensing, copyright notice, and contributor agreements created important precedents for collaborative software development. Their approach to open source licensing established new standards for code sharing that balance innovation with intellectual property rights. By treating code as inherently social rather than purely functional, GitHub didn't just build a repository. They created an entirely new model for software development that transformed coding from a solitary activity into a community endeavor. 62. In 2008, Jeff Atwood and Joel Spolsky created Stack Overflow, a Q&A site for programmers when forums and mailing lists already dominated technical discussions. The concept seemed redundant. Why would developers need yet another place to ask questions? Their rigid reputation system, with its emphasis on question quality and answer voting, appeared unnecessarily complex compared to traditional forums. Even tech community managers questioned whether programmers would embrace such structured interaction rather than free-flowing discussion. What critics missed was how profoundly broken existing solutions were, filled with duplicate questions, abandoned threads, and buried information. The legal frameworks Stack Overflow established for user contributions and content licensing created important precedents for knowledge-sharing platforms. Their approach to community moderation established new standards for quality control that balance openness with expertise verification. By treating programming knowledge as a collectively curated resource rather than scattered conversations, Stack Overflow didn't just build a Q&A site. They created a programming knowledge base that fundamentally changed how developers solve problems, transforming isolated debugging into collaborative problem solving. 63. In 2012, Ev Williams launched Medium when WordPress and Blogger already dominated publishing. Critics questioned why writers would need another blogging platform, especially one with less customization than existing options. The concept seemed particularly puzzling given Williams' history as Twitter co-founder and Blogger creator. Why compete with his own prior innovation? Medium's focus on clean design and quality rather than personalization appeared to misunderstand what bloggers valued most: individual expression and control. What skeptics missed was the growing fragmentation of online writing and the increasing burden of maintaining personal blogs in an era of social media immediacy. The legal frameworks Medium established for creator monetization, content moderation, and intellectual property rights created important precedents for publishing platforms. Their approach to the relationship between writers and readers established new standards for digital publishing that balance creator ownership with platform curation. By reimagining publishing as networked rather than isolated, Medium didn't just build a blogging platform. They created a writing ecosystem that transformed independent publishing from a technical challenge into a distribution opportunity. 64. In 2005, Reddit proposed something that sounded unnecessarily complicated. Instead of visiting websites directly, users would submit links for others to vote on. The concept of a link aggregator seemed redundant when search engines already helped people find content, while social bookmarking sites like Delicious already existed. Critics questioned whether democratic voting would produce quality results rather than popularizing lowest common denominator content. Even tech enthusiasts wondered whether anonymous forums could avoid the toxicity that plagued earlier community sites. What skeptics missed was the power of combining curation, discussion, and discovery in a single platform organized around topics rather than personal connections. The legal frameworks Reddit established for content moderation, user anonymity, and community governance created important precedents for user-generated content platforms. Their approach to balancing free expression with harm prevention established new standards for digital communities that continue to influence platform policies worldwide. By creating a content-centric rather than connection-centric social platform, Reddit didn't just build a website. They created an entirely new model for internet community that transformed how we discover and discuss shared interests online. 65. When Tumblr launched in 2007, social media experts questioned whether the world needed a hybrid between blogging and social networking when specialized platforms for each already existed. The concept of microblogging seemed unnecessarily niche, while the platform's multimedia focus appeared at odds with text-centric blogging traditions. Even tech reviewers wondered whether Tumblr's peculiar reblogging system would create coherent conversations compared to traditional comment threads. The platform's emphasis on creative expression over personal connection seemed to misunderstand what had made Facebook and MySpace successful. What critics missed was the growing desire for identity exploration beyond friend networks and the increasing importance of visual communication online. The legal frameworks Tumblr established for creative content sharing, attribution, and remix culture created important precedents for social platforms. Their approach to community standards established new models for content moderation that balance creative freedom with harm prevention. By creating a space where identity could be fluid and interest-based rather than fixed and relationship-based, Tumblr didn't just build a social network. They created a digital commons that transformed how we express ourselves online. 66. When Discord launched in 2015, targeting gamers with yet another voice chat application, industry experts were skeptical. Established services like TeamSpeak, Ventrilo, and Skype already dominated gaming communication. The concept of building a business around chat seemed particularly questionable when gaming voice tools were typically one-time purchases rather than subscription services. Even tech reviewers wondered whether Discord's focus on persistent servers rather than session-based connections offered meaningful advantages. What skeptics missed was how fundamentally Discord would reimagine community structure through topic-based channels, role systems, and bot integration. The legal frameworks Discord established for community moderation, content policies, and underage user protection created important precedents for communication platforms. Their approach to balancing privacy with safety established new standards for digital community governance that influence platform design across the industry. By treating gaming communication as a community-building opportunity rather than just a tactical tool. Discord didn't just create a chat application. They built a social infrastructure that transformed how interest groups organize and interact online, extending far beyond their original gaming focus. 67. In 2011, when YouTube already dominated video, Twitch focused exclusively on live gaming broadcasts, a concept that seemed absurdly niche to media experts. The idea that people would watch others play video games rather than playing themselves struck many as fundamentally misunderstanding gaming culture. Traditional entertainment executives dismissed the platform, questioning whether watching amateur players could ever compete with professional content. Even gaming journalists wondered whether sufficient audience existed for live streaming compared to edited highlights. What critics missed was the parasocial power of real-time interaction between creators and viewers, creating relationships that recorded content couldn't match. The legal frameworks Twitch established for live content moderation, copyright music usage, and creator monetization created important precedents for streaming platforms. Their approach to managing the unique challenges of live broadcast established new standards for real-time content governance that continue to influence streaming regulations worldwide. By recognizing gaming as performance rather than just participation, Twitch didn't just build a streaming platform. They created an entirely new entertainment category that transformed gaming from solitary activity into spectator sport. 68. When Coursera launched in 2012 offering university courses online for free, traditional education institutions were dismissive. The concept of digital learning seemed fundamentally inferior to classroom instruction, lacking the accountability, interaction, and rigor of in-person education. Academic administrators questioned whether recorded lectures and automated assessments could match the Socratic method and personalized feedback of traditional teaching. Even education technology experts wondered whether students would complete courses without the structure and social pressure of physical classrooms. What skeptics missed was the dramatic accessibility gap in higher education and the growing demand for flexible, lifelong learning opportunities. The legal frameworks Coursera established for academic certification, intellectual property rights for course materials, and educational data privacy created important precedents for online learning platforms. Their approach to digital credentials established new standards for non-traditional certification that continue to influence educational accreditation worldwide. By reimagining education as content rather than location, Coursera didn't just build a learning platform. They created an entirely new model for knowledge distribution that transformed who has access to world-class education. 69. You're standing in a drugstore aisle, staring at a wall of overpriced razors, when Michael Dubin wondered, why hasn't anyone simplified this? In 2011, Dollar Shave Club proposed something radical, mailing razors directly to customers monthly for $1, bypassing retail markup entirely. Industry experts laughed, insisting consumers would never abandon the tactile experience of buying razors in stores or trust subscription delivery for personal care items. Gillette and Schick, controlling 85% of the market, dismissed the threat entirely. What they missed was the growing consumer fatigue with innovation that merely added more blades while raising prices. When Dubin's irreverent launch video went viral, cost $4,500, views 27 million, it revealed how vulnerable legacy brands were to humor and transparency. 5 years later, Unilever acquired the company for $1 billion, sending shockwaves through consumer packaged goods. Upon analytical reflection, the case revealed how deeply established industries can misinterpret convenience as unnecessary disruption, failing to see that sometimes customers don't want choices. They want relief from having to choose. 70. In 1998, a Florida woman was struggling with pantyhose in a bathroom when she made a decision that would revolutionize women's undergarments. Sarah Blakely cut the feet off her pantyhose to wear under white pants, inadvertently creating the prototype for what would become Spanx. With just $5,000 in savings and no business experience, she began selling her modified hosiery against the advice of every industry expert. Patent attorneys laughed at her footless pantyhose concept. Manufacturers refused to produce her design, claiming no market existed. Even department store buyers initially rejected the product as solving a problem women didn't know they had. Without external funding or fashion connections, Blakely sold Spanx from a folding table, eventually persuading Neiman Marcus to carry her product. By 2012, she became the youngest self-made female billionaire in America. The case demonstrated how industries dominated by men often fail to recognize women's needs until they're forced to by market demand, reminding us that innovation rarely comes from within systems designed to maintain the status quo. 71. Will you be my friend? I'm willing to pay. In 2009, rentafriend.com launched with a premise so absurd it sounded like satire. A platform where lonely people could hire platonic companions for social events by the hour. Psychology experts warned the service would reinforce unhealthy social dynamics and prevent genuine connection development. Social critics called it the final commodification of human relationships. Friendship reduced to a financial transaction. Founder Scott Rosenbaum faced intense skepticism about whether people would admit needing such a service, let alone pay for it. Yet, within a year, the platform had over 500,000 friends for hire, earning $20 to $50 hourly, revealing a profound loneliness epidemic hidden beneath social media's veneer of hyperconnectivity. The business continues to thrive, with members paying for movie companions, networking event plus ones, and tour guides in new cities. The paradoxical success of monetized friendship reveals our increasingly compartmentalized social lives, where authentic connection becomes both more valuable and more elusive as we normalize charging for what was once freely given. 72. Physical touch became so rare in modern society that in 2012, professional cuddling emerged as a legitimate service industry. Companies like Cuddle Up to Me charged $80 an hour for platonic embraces, facing immediate skepticism from mental health professionals who questioned whether commercialized affection could provide genuine emotional benefits. Critics warned the service would attract sexual misconduct, while traditional therapists argued it created unhealthy attachment without addressing underlying issues. The concept seemed fundamentally flawed. How could paying strangers for hugs possibly substitute for authentic connection? Yet, as studies increasingly linked touch deprivation to anxiety, depression, and compromised immune function, professional cuddling expanded into a regulated industry with certification programs and ethical guidelines. Court cases established important precedents, distinguishing therapeutic touch from adult services, creating a new legal category of wellness providers. The cuddle industry's strange success reflects our paradoxical relationship with physical connection. As technology reduces our daily touch interactions, we've created a commercial substitute for what humans once received freely through community, demonstrating how even our most basic needs become services when natural supply chains break down. 73. I will draw a cat for you. $10. With this absurdly simple premise, Steve Gadlin appeared on Shark Tank in 2012 seeking investment for his company, I Want to Draw, a cat for you.com. His business model consisted entirely of hand-drawing crude stick figure cats based on customer requests. Investors were incredulous. How could anyone build a sustainable business around childlike cat sketches? Mark Cuban, however, immediately invested $25,000 for 33% equity, recognizing something others missed: the perfect combination of minimal production costs and internet absurdist humor. Gadlin ultimately drew over 18,000 cat pictures, generating over $200,000 in revenue before intentionally shutting down at the peak of popularity. Each cat took approximately 30 seconds to draw, making his hourly rate rival that of corporate attorneys. The case established new precedents for valuing conceptual art and performance commerce, where the story behind the transaction becomes more valuable than the product itself. Gadlin's success revealed the economic potential of anti-skill authenticity in an era of filtered perfection, proving that sometimes the marketplace rewards honest whimsy more generously than polished expertise. 74. Vermont resident Kyle Waring looked at the record-breaking snowfall of 2015 and saw opportunity where others saw inconvenience. He launched ShipSnowYo.com, charging $89 to mail 6 pounds of authentic New England snow to warmer climates. Critics ridiculed the concept as the ultimate unnecessary luxury, paying for frozen water to be shipped across the country when ice machines exist everywhere. Logistics experts pointed out the obvious flaw: snow melts. Waring's solution? Packaging innovations that preserved the snow just long enough to arrive partially frozen, marketing the inevitable melting as part of the experience. Despite universal mockery, the company sold out repeatedly, shipping to all 50 states as customers paid premium prices for snowball fights in Florida and authentic snowman construction in California. The business revealed a profound truth about modern consumption. Authenticity and origin stories command price premiums even for literally identical molecules of H2O. Waring's improbable success demonstrates how context and narrative transform worthless materials into coveted commodities, proving that in the attention economy, absurdity itself becomes a marketable feature rather than a bug. 75. In 2015, Alex Craig asked his girlfriend what she thought about sending messages written on potatoes through the mail. Her response: "That's the stupidest idea I've ever heard." 3 days later, he launched Potato Parcel, allowing customers to mail personalized messages on unwrapped potatoes for $10 each. Business experts were bewildered by the concept. Who would pay 10 times a potato's value for a message that could be sent digitally for free? The logistics seemed equally questionable. Unpackaged produce traveling through mail systems, arriving days later as a slowly deteriorating vegetable with Sharpie writing. What critics missed was the perfect storm of absurdist humor, physical interruption in a digital world, and the psychological impact of receiving an unexpected tuber. The company reached $25,000 in monthly sales within a year, eventually appearing on Shark Tank and securing investment from Kevin O'Leary. Potato Parcel's peculiar success reveals how digital saturation has created market value for physical novelty, regardless of practicality or permanence. In an era of effortless communication, sometimes the medium becomes more meaningful than the message, especially when that medium is a potato. 76. In 2016, Chelsea Brownridge noticed fellow Brooklyn dog owners avoiding shops and restaurants because they couldn't bring their pets inside. Her solution? Dog Parker. Climate-controlled sidewalk dog houses where owners could temporarily store their canines during errands. Critics immediately questioned whether urban pet owners would trust street corner kennels controlled by an app, comparing them to dog lockers, and questioning their safety during weather extremes. Animal welfare groups raised concerns about stress in unfamiliar environments, while city officials worried about sidewalk obstruction. The concept seemed fundamentally misaligned with how people view pets, as family members rather than items to be stored. Yet Dog Parker, later renamed DogSpot, expanded to multiple cities, partnering with retailers who recognized that pet-friendly accommodations increased shopping time. The legal frameworks established through the company's municipal negotiations created new precedents for commercial use of sidewalk space and pet accommodation regulations. The service's counterintuitive success revealed how pet ownership demographics had fundamentally shifted from viewing animals as property to seeing them as family members deserving premium services, demonstrating that modern pet parents will pay human prices for solutions that acknowledge their emotional bonds. 77. In January 2015, an Australian entrepreneur launched ShipYourEnemiesGlitter.com, a service charging $10 to mail envelopes filled with glitter to unsuspecting recipients. The concept: when opened, the envelope would release a cloud of near impossible to clean micro sparkles throughout the victim's home or office. Legal experts immediately raised concerns about harassment, mail tampering, and potentially dangerous materials being sent through postal systems. Ethics committees questioned whether facilitating anonymous revenge constituted encouraging harassment. Even business analysts doubted whether sufficient sustained demand existed for vindictive glitter bombing beyond novelty purchases. Yet within 24 hours of launch, the site received over 2,000 orders and crashed repeatedly from traffic volume, forcing the founder to suspend operations and ultimately sell the business for $85,000 just 9 days after launch. The glitter bomb phenomenon spawned dozens of copycat services and established new precedents regarding the legal boundaries of mail-based pranks. The service's explosive popularity revealed the substantial market demand for consequence-free revenge mechanisms in an era of digital conflict without physical outlets, proving that sometimes the pettiest impulses create the most glittering business opportunities. 78. The history of innovation is filled with complex technological breakthroughs, but sometimes the dumbest ideas win. In 2001, Gary Clegg created the Slanket, literally a blanket with sleeves, after struggling to stay warm while using his remote control in a cold college dorm. Textile experts dismissed the concept as an unnecessary modification to existing products, questioning whether consumers would pay premium prices for what was essentially a backwards bathrobe. The Slanket seemed destined to remain a niche product until competitor Snuggie launched in 2008 with an aggressive infomercial campaign, turning the concept into a cultural phenomenon and generating over $500 million in sales. The patent battles that ensued established important intellectual property precedents about when product modifications constitute unique inventions versus obvious adaptations. The sleeved blanket saga demonstrates how timing and marketing often matter more than originality or technical sophistication, with the first-to-market Slanket ultimately overshadowed by Snuggie's superior commercialization strategy. The analytical lesson: in consumer products, being first matters less than being loudest, as even the simplest innovation requires effective storytelling to transform convenience into necessity. 79. If someone proposed a business selling terracotta figurines that grow plant hair, you'd question their judgment. Yet since 1977, over 15 million chia pets have been sold, transforming simple clay sculptures covered in quick-growing chia seeds into an enduring cultural icon. When Joseph Enterprises first introduced the product, home decor experts dismissed it as tacky novelty destined for rapid obsolescence. Garden supply retailers questioned whether consumers would pay premium prices for what was essentially a houseplant gimmick, when traditional potted plants offered greater longevity and aesthetic appeal. The concept seemed fundamentally limited. Once the novelty wore off, why would anyone purchase another? Yet through brilliant seasonal marketing, collectible designs, and pop culture licensing, Chia Pets achieved what few novelty products ever do: multi-generational staying power. The trademark battles fought to protect the Chia slogan established important precedents about sound-based trademarks and jingle protection. The product's improbable longevity reveals how strongly consumers respond to interactive products that change over time, suggesting our desire to nurture growth transcends rational utility calculations, creating sustained markets for products that should have been fads. 80. You're cold. You reach for a blanket, but your arms get cold when you reach for the remote. This mundane problem inspired the Snuggie, a blanket with sleeves that became one of the most ridiculed yet financially successful products in infomercial history. When All Star Products Group launched the concept in 2008, fashion critics mocked it as a backwards bathrobe, while consumer advocates questioned whether anyone would pay $19.95 for what appeared to be hospital gowns made of fleece. The product seemed destined for late-night comedy punchlines rather than commercial success. Yet, through aggressive buy one, get one free promotions and intentionally campy advertising, Snuggie sold over 30 million units and generated $500+ million in revenue. The legal battles that emerged over the Snuggie's classification, is it a blanket or garment for import tariff purposes, established important precedents in customs law. The United States Court of International Trade ultimately ruled it was a garment with sleeves, significantly impacting its import taxation. The Snuggie phenomenon demonstrates how self-aware absurdity can transform a punchline into a powerhouse brand, proving that sometimes leaning into ridicule creates stronger consumer identification than attempting to avoid it. 81. Simple rubber bands shaped like animals should never have been a multi-million-dollar business, yet silly bands became one of the biggest tween crazes of 2010. Created by businessman Robert Krook after seeing similar products in Japan, these colorful silicone bands traded on schoolyards like currency, with rare shapes commanding premium prices despite costing pennies to manufacture. Education experts initially dismissed them as classroom distractions, while child development specialists questioned whether collecting shapeless rubber bands, they only revealed their forms when not being worn, offered any developmental benefits compared to traditional toys. Parents resisted paying $5 for what amounted to 24 rubber bands. Yet at the peak of popularity, silly bands were selling 1 million packs per week, with schools across America eventually banning them due to trade-related conflicts. The trademark and design patent cases surrounding silly bands created important precedents about the protectability of functional items with decorative elements. Their unexpected success demonstrated the economic power of artificial scarcity and collectability in children's products, revealing how seemingly worthless items transform into status symbols through the complex social dynamics of childhood, where ownership often matters more than utility. 82. In 1996, Bandai introduced a keychain-sized device requiring owners to press buttons regularly to keep a virtual pet alive. The Tamagotchi concept seemed fundamentally flawed. Who would want the stress of preventing a digital creature's death without the rewards of actual pet ownership? Child psychologists questioned whether the responsibility would create anxiety rather than enjoyment, while educators predicted the devices would create classroom disruptions. Parents wondered why children would bond with primitive pixel animations, requiring constant attention. Yet Tamagotchi became a global phenomenon, selling over 82 million units worldwide as children and many adults formed genuine emotional attachments to their digital dependence. Schools eventually banned the devices after students became distraught over classroom pet deaths during lessons when they couldn't perform care tasks. The product created entirely new legal questions about the status of digital entities and psychological ownership of virtual property. Tamagotchi's unlikely success revealed how effectively simple responsibility mechanics trigger nurturing instincts, demonstrating that emotional attachment doesn't require sophisticated technology, just the simulation of dependence, creating a market for digital companionship that continues expanding into modern AI relationships. 83. In 1993, Ty Warner launched Beanie Babies with a revolutionary concept: deliberate scarcity in mass-produced toys. Each plush animal contained just enough beans to be floppy without being shapeless. But the true innovation was manufacturing uncertainty. Limited production runs and unexpected retirements, creating artificial rarity. Toy industry experts initially dismissed them as underpriced, $5, and understuffed compared to traditional plush animals. Retailers questioned whether collectibles could succeed without media tie-ins or established characters. The concept seemed especially dubious, since the primary market was children, not traditional collectors. Yet Beanie Babies became a speculative bubble so significant that divorcing couples literally divided their collections in court, while prices for rare specimens exceeded $10,000. The secondary market grew so large that authentication services emerged, with counterfeiting prosecutions establishing important precedents about intellectual property in collectible markets. Tye's innovative distribution strategy, avoiding major retailers in favor of small gift shops with limited inventory, created a treasure hunt mentality that transformed shopping into entertainment. Upon analytical reflection, Beanie Babies revealed how readily humans project value onto inherently worthless objects, once scarcity narratives override rational valuation, presaging cryptocurrency dynamics decades before Bitcoin. 84. A simple three-pronged plastic device that spins. That's it. No batteries, no lights, no digital components, just physics. When fidget spinners exploded in popularity in 2017, toy industry experts were baffled by their appeal in an era of sophisticated electronic entertainment. The concept seemed fundamentally limited. How long could children remain entertained by an object with exactly one function? Educational psychologists questioned manufacturers' unsubstantiated claims about attention benefits, while schools quickly banned the devices as disruptive rather than helpful. Yet global sales reached an estimated $500 million, with factories struggling to meet demand, as the toys dominated Amazon's bestseller list for months. The patent battles surrounding fidget spinners established important precedents about the enforceability of utility patents for simple mechanical devices, particularly after original inventor Catherine Hettinger's patent expired in 2005, leaving the market open to thousands of manufacturers. The spinner phenomenon demonstrated how physical, tactile experiences gained premium value precisely as digital entertainment became ubiquitous, revealing a sensory hunger that screens cannot satisfy. The analytical irony? A device supposedly helping attention deficits succeeded by capturing our attention, proving that sometimes innovation means rediscovering what we've lost rather than creating something new. 85. The concept sounds like a parent's nightmare, selling children sticky, gooey, messy substances specifically designed to be played with rather than cleaned up. Yet when slime-making kits exploded in popularity around 2017, they transformed from simple chemistry experiments into a social media-driven industry, generating billions in annual sales. Household product manufacturers were baffled as children deliberately created the messes parents had traditionally paid good money to eliminate. School administrators banned homemade slime after borax-related injuries, while child psychologists questioned the developmental benefits compared to traditional educational toys. What critics missed was the perfect storm of sensory satisfaction, DIY empowerment, and Instagram-worthy visual appeal that slime provided. The product liability cases that emerged from slime-related injuries established important precedents about manufacturer responsibility for products explicitly intended for modification by children. The glue industry reported unprecedented sales increases, with Elmer's glue specifically citing slime as driving a revenue surge of over 50%. The slime phenomenon demonstrates how social media transforms traditional play patterns by adding performance and documentation elements, creating markets for products whose primary value lies not in the having, but in the showing, where likes and views become central to the play experience itself. 86. In the early 1990s, the hottest playground status symbol wasn't electronic. It was circular cardboard discs with printed designs. When the Pog Milk Cap game resurfaced from 1930s Hawaiian origins, toy industry experts were perplexed by its primitive simplicity in the era of Game Boys and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The concept seemed absurdly basic. Collect cardboard circles and try to flip your opponent's pieces by throwing a heavier slammer disc at them. Educational value appeared minimal, while manufacturing costs were pennies per unit. Yet Pogs became a billion-dollar phenomenon, with children worldwide obsessively collecting the cardboard discs until schools nationwide banned them as gambling devices when players began competing for keeps. The trademark battles between the World Pog Federation and competitors established important precedents about generic terms versus protectable brands. The Pog craze demonstrated how successfully artificial scarcity and collectability can override rational value assessment, with children paying dollars for cardboard worth fractions of cents. The analytical insight. Every generation rediscovers the thrill of ownership and status competition through collecting, whether the medium is digital NFTs or cardboard circles, revealing how the packaging of scarcity matters more than the inherent value of what's being collected. 87. All signs point to yes. In 1946, Abe Bookman created the Magic 8 Ball, a plastic sphere containing a 20-sided die floating in alcohol-tinted blue liquid. The concept was absurdly simple. Ask a question, shake the ball, and receive one of 20 pre-written answers visible through a window. Fortune-telling had existed for centuries, but psychologists questioned whether mass-produced divination could provide the personalized experience that made traditional fortune-telling appealing. Toy manufacturers doubted whether children would remain engaged with a product offering such limited responses and no skill development. Yet, the Magic 8 Ball has sold over 100 million units, becoming one of the most recognizable toys in history. The trademark and trade dress protections established for the distinctive blue liquid and characteristic answers created important precedents about iconic design elements. The product's enduring appeal reveals our complex relationship with uncertainty. We simultaneously seek definitive answers while preferring those that preserve our agency. Upon analytical reflection, the Magic 8 Ball's genius lies in externalizing decision-making responsibility without actually surrendering control, offering the psychological comfort of guidance while allowing us to ignore any answers we dislike, a dynamic that explains much about our relationship with all forms of divination. 88. In 1963, British accountant Edward Craven Walker filled a bottle with colored wax and paraffin that formed psychedelic blobs when heated by a light bulb. Interior designers initially dismissed his lava lamp as garish novelty rather than serious decor, while safety experts worried about combining hot surfaces with flammable materials in household settings. The concept seemed fundamentally limited, a decorative object with no practical function beyond creating slowly morphing shapes. Yet, lava lamps became a cultural icon, selling over 50 million units worldwide and transcending multiple generational aesthetics from hippie to retro to ironic kitsch. The patent and trademark battles surrounding lava lamps established important precedents about protecting visual effects rather than just mechanical functions. The lamp's surprising longevity demonstrates the market value of kinetic unpredictability in an increasingly digital world. The fact that no two lava lamp movements are ever identical creates a uniquely analog appeal that perfect digital simulations cannot replicate. The analytical insight? Sometimes commercial success comes not from solving problems, but from creating controlled chaos in environments that have become too ordered, allowing us to experience unpredictability without its consequences, a phenomenon that explains much about our aesthetic preferences across domains. 89. In 1975, entrepreneurs Josh Reynolds and Maris Ambatz created rings containing thermochromic capsules that changed color with body temperature, marketing them as mood rings that revealed the wearer's emotional state. Scientists immediately criticized the pseudoscientific claims, pointing out that peripheral body temperature correlates poorly with emotions. Jewelry designers questioned whether color-changing stones could compete with traditional gemstones for fashion appeal. The concept seemed fundamentally flawed. Why would consumers want accessories broadcasting potentially embarrassing emotions they might prefer to conceal? Yet mood rings became a cultural phenomenon, selling millions at premium prices despite manufacturing costs under $1 per unit. The trademark and false advertising cases surrounding mood jewelry established important precedents about implied scientific claims in consumer products. What made mood rings successful wasn't scientific validity, but their function as conversation starters and emotional externalization tools, allowing indirect discussion of feelings through an object. The analytical lesson: consumers often value products less for what they actually do than for the social interactions they facilitate, demonstrating that merchandise can function primarily as communication tools rather than practical objects, creating markets for products whose real utility is the discussions they generate. 90. Hungarian architecture professor Erno Rubik created a three-dimensional puzzle in 1974 that seemed destined for obscurity. A cube with colored faces that could be rotated into 43 quintillion possible combinations, yet only one correct solution. Toy manufacturers initially rejected the concept as too difficult for children, while educators questioned whether frustration with its complexity would outweigh any spatial reasoning benefits. Even mathematicians considered it primarily an obscure demonstration of group theory rather than entertainment. Yet the Rubik's Cube became the best-selling puzzle in history, with over 450 million units sold worldwide. International competitions emerged around solving speed, with the current record under 3.5 seconds. The intellectual property protections established for the cube's internal mechanism created important precedents about functional versus decorative elements in toys. The cube's unprecedented success revealed the psychological appeal of problems that are simultaneously comprehensible and nearly impossible. We can understand what constitutes success while facing overwhelming complexity in achieving it. The analytical insight: humans are drawn to challenges at the edge of impossibility, especially those that promise order emerging from chaos through persistence alone, a principle that explains engagement across domains from gaming to education. 91. A plastic circle you spin around your waist. That's it. When Richard Knurr and Arthur Spud Mellon introduced the modern hula hoop in 1958, fitness equipment consisted primarily of weights and specialized machines. The concept seemed absurdly simplistic compared to sophisticated exercise gear, while physical education experts questioned whether spinning a plastic ring could provide meaningful fitness benefits. Even toy manufacturers doubted whether children would remain engaged with an object requiring significant skill to operate successfully. Yet, Wham-O sold over 25 million hula hoops within 4 months of launch, creating a global phenomenon that transcended age demographics. The trademark battles over the term hula hoop established important precedents about generic terms versus protectable brands. Modern research has vindicated the hoop's fitness credentials, with studies confirming its core strengthening and cardiovascular benefits. The hoop's enduring appeal across decades reveals our preference for playful fitness over explicit exercise regimens, demonstrating how disguising physical exertion as entertainment creates substantially higher engagement than traditional workout equipment. The analytical truth: sometimes the most effective innovations strip away complexity rather than adding it, returning to fundamentals that sophisticated alternatives had needlessly complicated. 92. A metal spring that walks downstairs. When naval engineer Richard James accidentally knocked a tension spring off his desk in 1943 and watched it walk across the floor, he envisioned a children's toy. His wife Betty named it Slinky. Toy manufacturers initially rejected the concept as too simplistic in an increasingly electronic toy market, questioning whether children would remain engaged with an object having such limited functionality. Even retailers doubted whether consumers would pay for what was essentially industrial material, repurposed without significant modification. Yet over 350 million Slinkies have sold worldwide, making it one of the most enduring toys in history. The patent protections established for the specific metallurgical properties required for proper walking created important precedents about material science innovations in simple objects. The Slinky's sustained popularity across generations reveals our fascination with objects that seem to defy physics through simple principles, creating moments of apparent magic through basic science. The analytical insight, the most compelling demonstrations of physical principles aren't detailed explanations, but objects that create brief moments where the world seems to operate by different rules, triggering wonder that sophisticated electronic toys with predetermined outcomes rarely achieve. 93. A disc on a string. That's the entire concept behind the yo-yo, one of history's most enduring toys. When Pedro Flores began manufacturing the modern yo-yo in 1928, based on a 2,500-year-old design, toy experts questioned whether a product requiring significant practice for basic operation could compete with immediately gratifying alternatives. The concept seemed fundamentally limited. The yo-yo performs a small repertoire of motions determined by physics, rather than offering narrative play or creative expression. Even marketing professionals doubted whether children would invest time mastering skills with no practical application. Yet yo-yos have sold billions of units worldwide, periodically resurfacing as playground phenomena across generations. The trademark battles over the term yo-yo established important precedents when courts ruled it had become generic, forcing Duncan to compete on quality rather than name recognition. The yo-yo's remarkable longevity demonstrates how mastery-based toys create deeper engagement than those offering immediate gratification, revealing our intrinsic satisfaction in developing skills through deliberate practice regardless of practical application. The analytical lesson: sometimes commercial staying power comes from embracing rather than eliminating learning curves, creating products that reward investment rather than providing instant but shallow satisfaction. 94. When Noah and Joseph McVicker created a wallpaper cleaning putty in 1933, they never imagined it would become one of history's most iconic children's toys. After discovering children were using the cleaning compound to make models, they removed the cleaning chemicals, added colors, and rebranded it Play-Doh in 1956. Art supply manufacturers initially dismissed it as inferior to traditional clay, while educators questioned its educational value compared to established modeling materials. Even toy retailers doubted whether parents would purchase a product that dried out if left uncovered. Yet, over 3 billion cans of Play-Doh have sold worldwide, with the distinctive scent officially trademarked in 2018. The intellectual property protections established for the compound's unique formulation created important precedents about trade secret protection for sensory product characteristics. The product's sustained success across generations reveals the psychological appeal of impermanent creativity. Play-Doh's eventual return to formless lumps removes the pressure of creating lasting works, allowing pure experiential pleasure without judgment. The analytical insight: sometimes products succeed precisely because they don't create permanent results, offering liberation through impermanence in a world increasingly focused on documenting and preserving every creation. 95. You're eating pie at the Frisbee Baking Company in 1871 when someone flips the empty tin through the air. This mundane moment eventually evolved into the Frisbee, one of the most successful sporting goods in history. When Walter Morrison designed the modern plastic flying disc, originally called the Pluto Platter, sporting goods manufacturers questioned whether such a simplistic device could compete with established team sports equipment. The concept seemed fundamentally limited: a single piece of molded plastic with no moving parts or technical sophistication. Even retailers doubted whether consumers would pay for what amounted to a refined version of throwing a pie tin. Yet Wham-O sold over 100 million Frisbees within the first decade of acquiring the rights, spawning multiple competitive sports, including ultimate Frisbee and disc golf. The trademark battles over the term Frisbee established important precedents about brand protection for products inspired by generic activities. The flying disc's remarkable success demonstrates how accessibility creates adoption. The minimal skill required for basic enjoyment combined with the high ceiling for mastery creates an unusually broad appeal spectrum. The analytical truth. Sometimes innovation means formalizing and optimizing activities people are already doing, rather than inventing entirely new behaviors. 96. In 1969, inventor Rain Geyer approached Parker Brothers with his latest creation: foam balls and dart guns, safe enough for indoor play. When they declined, he took the concept to Hasbro, who rebranded it Nerf and created one of the most successful toy lines in history. Sporting goods manufacturers initially dismissed foam equipment as inherently inferior to traditional materials, questioning whether soft alternatives could provide authentic athletic experiences. Safety experts worried that safe projectiles would encourage dangerous behavior, while parents questioned whether indoor ball play should be encouraged at all. Yet Nerf has generated billions in revenue across multiple product lines, with the foam football alone selling over 8 million units annually. The patent protections established for Nerf's specific foam formulations created important precedents about material science innovations in toys. The brand's sustained success across generations reveals how removing consequences creates broader participation. When the risk of injury or property damage disappears, more people willingly engage. The analytical insight. Sometimes the most valuable innovation isn't creating new capabilities, but removing the downsides of existing activities, allowing traditional play to migrate into previously forbidden contexts by changing not what we do, but where we can do it. 97. In 1987, Scott Stillinger created a ball of rubber filaments that became one of the most unlikely success stories in toy history. The koosh ball, resembling a pom-pom made of rubber bands, was designed to be easier for his children to catch than conventional balls. Toy manufacturers initially dismissed it as too simplistic compared to electronic toys dominating the market, questioning whether a static object with no interactive features could maintain children's interest. Sports equipment companies doubted whether a ball that couldn't bounce or roll effectively served any athletic purpose. Yet koosh sold millions of units and spawned numerous imitators, becoming a sensory staple in homes, schools, and therapy offices worldwide. The trademark and trade dress protections established for the distinctive appearance created important precedents about protecting the overall look and feel of products. The koosh ball's counterintuitive success reveals the significant market value of tactile experiences in an increasingly digital world. The distinctive sensation of filaments against skin provides neurological input that screens cannot replicate. The analytical lesson. As virtual experiences consume more of our attention, products offering novel physical sensations gain premium value precisely because they engage neurological systems that digital interfaces cannot reach. 98. During a 1941 hunting trip, Swiss engineer Georges de Mestral noticed cockleburrs stuck to his clothes and his dog's fur. 8 years of research later, he replicated the natural hook and loop mechanism to create Velcro. Clothing manufacturers initially rejected the fastening system as too artificial and mechanical compared to traditional buttons and zippers, questioning whether consumers would accept the distinctive ripping sound and eventual wear patterns. Even military contractors doubted whether hook and loop fasteners could provide the security and durability of established closure systems. Yet Velcro now generates over $100 million in annual revenue, appearing in applications from NASA spacesuits to children's shoes. The patent protections established for the manufacturing process created important precedents about biomimicry innovations. The product's remarkable versatility across industries demonstrates how horizontal solutions, those addressing common problems across verticals rather than specific challenges within them, often create more sustained value than specialized innovations. The analytical insight? Sometimes the most valuable inventions aren't new capabilities, but new implementations of principles nature has already perfected, revealing how innovation frequently involves translating existing solutions between contexts rather than creating entirely new approaches. 99. In 1968, Spencer Silver developed an adhesive at 3M that seemed like a complete failure. It stuck to surfaces but could be easily lifted without leaving residue. For years, this low-tack adhesive was a laboratory curiosity without application until colleague Art Fry realized it could create bookmarks that wouldn't fall out but wouldn't damage pages. Post-it notes initially faced rejection from 3M's own marketing department, which questioned whether anyone would pay premium prices for scrap paper with defective glue. Office supply retailers doubted whether sticky notes offered sufficient advantages over traditional notepads to justify their higher cost. Yet Post-its became one of the most successful office products in history, with current annual sales exceeding $1 billion. The patent protections established for the specific adhesive formulation created important precedents about chemical innovations in consumer products. The product's phenomenal success reveals how significantly we undervalue small friction reductions in daily tasks. The tiny convenience of not needing clips or tape multiplied across thousands of instances creates substantial cumulative value. The analytical truth: sometimes the most important innovations aren't revolutionary new capabilities, but modest improvements to frequent activities where small optimizations compound through repetition. 100. Packaging engineer Alfred Fielding and Swiss inventor Marc Chavan were attempting to create textured plastic wallpaper in 1957 when they accidentally created air-filled plastic bubbles that would become bubble wrap. Packaging professionals initially dismissed the material as impractical and expensive compared to established options like newspaper and Excelsior, questioning whether trapped air could provide adequate protection compared to denser materials. Even shipping companies doubted whether the significant volume-to-weight ratio made logistical sense for transport and storage. Yet bubble wrap now generates over $400 million in annual revenue for Sealed Air Corporation, with applications ranging from artwork protection to insulation. The patent protections established for the manufacturing process created important precedents about structural engineering in packaging materials. The product's sustained market dominance reveals how significantly we underestimated the value of damage prevention in increasingly complex supply chains. As products become more fragile and shipping distances increase, protection becomes worth premium pricing. The analytical insight: sometimes the most valuable innovations aren't the products themselves, but the materials that ensure they arrive intact, demonstrating how infrastructure and protective technologies create their own massive markets parallel to the goods they safeguard. 101. In 1942, naval contractor Vesta Stout was sealing ammunition boxes when she noticed the paper tape tabs frequently broke during opening, potentially costing precious seconds in combat. She proposed using a waterproof, cloth-backed tape instead, writing directly to President Roosevelt when supervisors ignored her. Johnson & Johnson subsequently developed what would become duct tape for military use. When repurposed for civilian applications after W. Weiss silent, construction professionals initially questioned whether a single tape could effectively address multiple applications, predicting specialized tapes would prove superior for specific uses. Even hardware retailers doubted whether homeowners would pay premium prices for industrial-grade tape when cheaper alternatives existed for most household repairs. Yet duct tape has become a cultural icon, with annual sales exceeding $100 million in the US alone. The patent protections established for the specific adhesive and backing materials created important precedents about adaptive use innovations. The product's remarkable versatility demonstrates the market value of good enough solutions that work adequately across diverse applications versus optimal tools for single purposes. The analytical lesson: sometimes the most valuable products aren't those that perform any single function perfectly, but those that perform many functions acceptably, revealing how adaptability often creates more sustained utility than specialized excellence. So that wraps up our journey through the dumbest startup ideas that somehow struck gold. From pet rocks making millions to Facebook's elite Harvard-only beginnings, it proves unexpected success often lurks where skepticism is highest. But now it's your turn. What do you think? Are these ventures proof that absurdity pays off, or simply that timing and execution matter more than the idea itself? Did we miss any ridiculous products that made investors even richer? Tell us your favorite in the comments. The best ones get pinned. If you enjoyed this exploration of unlikely success stories, prove it. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into billion-dollar blunders that should have succeeded but crashed instead.